So today I'm going to try to talk a bit about the Fool card in the Major Arcana. The tarot card, the Fool, is usually given the number 0 for its placement in the Major Arcana. This means that it's not really at the beginning or at the end or at any specific point, because it represents the state that exists at every moment. It's the decision you must constantly be making in your life and throughout your spiritual path and in your daily life as well. The 0 is a circular number, and it represents a matter of cycles, so that the Fool card is a cyclical card. It means that you'll come back to it again and again, and it can occur in between any of the other cards of the Major Arcana. The rest of the Major Arcana are laid out in a step-by-step process, so that you go from one of these cards to the next one and to the next one after that. But the Fool is a card that you always return to. In another sense, the Fool is the 0 card because it's the beginning and the end of the process described by the tarot. It's the card that happens at the very beginning of the tarot, as the state that exists even from birth onwards. And it's the card that occurs at the beginning of the spiritual stage of the tarot, of the whole part of the tarot that represents the process of spiritual learning, of spiritual growth. And it's also the card that comes at the end, because when you start the path of the mystic, then you started as a fool. You started as a person who is in a state of innocence born out of ignorance. When you end the path of the mystic, when you reach awakening, then you're also in a state of innocence. This is a state of innocence produced by understanding, by awareness. But they're both fools. It's just that one is a slightly different kind of fool than the other. The Fool is the most quintessentially human card of the tarot, because it reveals one very important truth, one that many people will try to deny or to hide from themselves, which is that we're all fools, that being a human means being a fool. It means generally not knowing what to do, not knowing what's going on in the world around you, not knowing what's going to happen next. The element of not knowing is the most essential part of the human experience. But it's also one of the things that we most fear, the unknown. And we'll go to great lengths to hide from the unknown, to hate the unknown, and even to lie to ourselves about what we do not know. So the Fool is symbolic of all of us. I have here a card of the Fool. I'm not sure how well it'll show up on the video, but I quite like this particular Fool card, because it shows the Fool going around in a spiral, and this is the cycle that the Fool keeps repeating over and over again. And our not knowing and our trying to avoid that which we do not know is something that causes us to enter into these cycles, so that we will end up repeating the same mistakes, repeating the same stories in our lives, coming back to the same problem again and again. And life and the mystery, the divine, works in this way, that it will keep throwing us back against the same barrier or the same challenge over and over again until we're ready to change. The fear of the unknown is also a fear of changing, because the moment you jump into the unknown, you're not what you were before. And so that fear of change leads us to become stuck, to hold on to our ignorance, to hold on to our foolishness as a way to not to have to change. The fool in the Fool card is wandering, and he's wandering generally towards folly, towards foolish acts. But he can see from where he is that there is something, though he can't see it clearly, he sees it through a veil, that there is wisdom, that there's awareness and understanding. And the Fool wants to reach this. But another part of that zero, that circle, is that he's going around and round on the same track. And if wisdom isn't on that track, then there's no way to get to there from here by simply following your path, by simply walking along the road. So what you have to do at some moment is to jump off the road. And this is why in many decks, the Fool is shown on the verge of jumping off a cliff. Because what it says is that to really go into growth, you have to not keep going the path that you've tread. You have to take a jump, a leap of faith. In many decks also, the Fool is depicted having a dog or a cat, some kind of a small animal, nipping at his heels. And this creature represents the animal side of the human being. So that we're running away in part from our animal natures on this evolutionary path. And we're trying to reach something else. We're trying to reach godhood or something like that. But again, it's something that we can't get there from here. And we can't get there by running away from that nature of ourselves. So that most people, in denying themselves and running away from themselves, like the Fool is running away from home, are also denying all of the potential of what we can become. The Fool is usually depicted in simple robes, sometimes in tattered robes, and he's in a state of poverty. He's a poor seeker in a state of darkness. And this poverty is the essence of where we are as unawakened beings. Human beings are in a state of poverty, even though that they have this great treasure within them, because they can't reach it. So the Fool is a card that symbolizes the verge of initiation. Initiation can mean, in this context, the more mundane initiation of wanting to jump into the new. And in the spiritual context, it means being prepared to initiate yourself on a spiritual path, to be initiated into a spiritual path. And this spiritual path is taking this wild leap into the unknown. You don't know what's there, and you can't know what's there, and you don't know where it's going to lead you. So in the end, you're going to have to take a leap of faith. So this is a fear of showing up. This is what is reflected in the Fool. People in their daily lives will often try not to show up, to be present in the moment, to be total in what they're doing. And instead, they'll try to distract themselves, hide. They'll do anything possible to avoid being in the now. And the challenge of the Fool is to say, you have to show up, and you have to confront this unknown and be willing to dive into it. This is the challenge that is presented over and over again in our lives. And it's a challenge that we can only get to where we want to go by being willing to take this risk.